that's probably the biggest mistake that low SR Zaryas make, and it's really one of the easiest things to fix. Alright, so this is a Silver Zarya on King's Row. I think this is about 1600, which is fine. Did he have any comments? This video is intended for a VOD review. I chose this one because I felt like I played well, but still made mistakes, and it was a close game. I don't want to choose one that was heavily sided either way, or that I didn't have good moments in. I would like to think this is an average game, assuming that I have a decent tank partner. At the time of this video, my SR is roughly 1600, and my peak this season is just shy of gold at 1980. I've fallen a bit since then, and would like to break into gold for the first time. Alright, let's get to it. Before we start, I completely understand why you use the replay viewer to record your VOD. It's a great tool, it's fantastic. Having said that, it does make VODs a little bit difficult to review sometimes because... okay, I just hope you don't use the default Zarya crosshair. It's really a really bad crosshair. It obscures a lot of vision. It's one of the worst default crosshairs in Overwatch. And also, the replay viewer makes it a little bit harder because I can't hear like comms and I can't see if you're pressing tab, so I'll kind of have to assume some of those things and we'll kind of continue along. And we'll be fine. We'll play it by ear. So, before we start, I wanted to talk a little bit about composition, kind of what you have, what you're running, what they have, what they're running, because it's always kind of good to start there. So, you guys have... tanks. Let's start with the tanks. Rein, Zarya. Actually, a really good combo. They synergize really well. They enable each other really well. Definitely a check mark for that. Healing wise, you have Brig, Moira. So what does this mean? Brig Moira is it's short range heals. Short range. That's terrible. It's short range heals. Brig Moira really need to be in the fight to do healing. So that's going to kind of dictate the style of comp that you have to run. And then for DPS, you are running Sim, Ashe. Oh, I'll just kind of pull these down here. Not a terrible combo at all. Sim is very good close range because that's essentially what you're going to be doing. Your heals are close range, and Dynamite and Ashe's Dynamite is also excellent at close range. So there's three styles of comp, essentially. There's dive, there's brawl, and there's poke. And you guys are a brawl comp. You're a brawl comp, and the reason you're a brawl comp is because your healers really need to be close range, and your tanks also need to be somewhat close range. And have abilities that are very beneficial if they are fighting close range. So you guys are really a brawl comp. So what does that mean for you as a composition? What really counters you is poke. Poke counters brawl pretty hard. So characters like Pharah, like Junkrat, even a Widow, if they could hit their shots, that could be really rough for this comp. Something like a Bastion, if they're set up and you can't get to them, although you do have a sim, so you could probably teleport. But something like that. Also, anything that prevents you from closing the distance quickly. Because in a brawl comp, your goal is to get from where you are to your enemy without taking any poke. So, characters like Mei, which is notorious on King's Row, who can wall you off. Now you can't close the distance. Orisa, Pull, Hammond can boop you around. Even Lucio, who can just speed the other team away from you, that could be a very serious problem for your comp. Let's talk about what they are running. Let's start again with the tanks. They're running Reinhardt, Orisa. Actually a fairly decent tank combo. I know most people kind of don't think of it that way, but it is a fairly decent tank combo, and it's more brawl. You might think it's poke because you have Orisa, and you're like, oh, we can just... Orisa's really good at poke, but Orisa's Fortify makes her actually really good at brawl because she can kind of take a lot of damage, or she can absorb a lot of damage without taking that much damage. So that part of their comp is definitely going to be brawl. They have Mercy Zen. Kind of an odd... So the thing with Mercy Zen is it's low heals. It's really low heals. That's Mercy Zen is low heals, but it's high utility. So if you're in a poke comp, that's fantastic. Mercy can damage boost. You get a lot more value. You get a lot more poke. Zen has he can do a tremendous amount of poke himself, and Discord Orb enables a tremendous amount of poke as well. So that is definitely poke. Their DPS lineup is Kree and Genji. This is a kind of an odd lineup for them to be running. Like, Kree is definitely really, really good at poke. Fantastic, and the Flash is super good to kind of protect him and his team against dive a little bit, and even against brawl to some degree, but not really. And the Genji, it's a bit of an odd pick just because you don't have an Ana to go with it, and I'm not sure like how he would play. It would definitely be a little weird for him. But essentially... yeah, essentially how you win this engagement, how you win this team fight is close the distance as fast as you can and take the least amount of poke possible. All right, let me go back and let's talk about a couple things. So we kind of just said the way you guys are a brawl comp. You want to close the distance as fast as you can, taking the least amount of poke possible, and just fight them right on them. Just be right on them. So you bubble early, you get a lot of charge. That's great. Right here, though, you do a pretty good job of avoiding poke, but your Reinhardt is taking a tremendous amount of poke to his shields, and you're essentially waiting for bubbles to re-engage. So you're here, your bubbles have a 10-second cooldown. You're sitting, you're essentially waiting for bubbles. You're going to bubble, you're going to go in. But the question is what should you be doing during this time period? So right now you're kind of just shooting shields, which is okay. That has some utility, but it's not really that useful. Let me actually go into a custom game. Let's go into King's Row. Maps. King's Row. Sure, we're gonna need this at some point. Oh, wait. There we go. So essentially, you have a lot of charge. You're super high charge, which is really, really good. But you don't want to take any poke, which you did a pretty good job. You were kind of hiding behind the pillar a little bit. But what you really need to be doing during this time period, because this is essentially downtime, you're waiting for your bubbles to come off cooldown, and then your plan is to engage with your bubbles. So you're sitting here, you bubbled, really, really good. What you should be doing right now is you should be scouting. So you didn't look behind you. What if there was a Mei right here? Whoop, been walled. And you saw Kree and Hotel here. Didn't do anything there. I mean, even if you wanted to just be, like, come up here, scout a little bit around here. You know, because you're essentially waiting for your bubbles to be off cooldown. Now, personally, I would try and stick with my Rhine, stay close, scout out Hotel, kind of push any enemies that are here away from here, because it's super important that you have this kind of scouted when you push, because chances are you'd actually want to push through Hotel and come out here and then fight them. But so yeah, let me hop back to the actual VOD itself and we'll keep going. So yeah, like, you do a decent job of not taking a lot of poke, but look how much poke your Reinhardt shield took. Now obviously I can't hear the comms, so I don't know what's happening, and this is your Reinhardt, so this isn't necessarily you. You don't make those decisions for him, but yeah, you took a lot of poke here. You want to, the goal is to take as the least amount of poke possible until you are literally on them, fighting them. And yeah, I see you bubble because you want him to go in and swing, which makes total sense. You know, that was the plan. Again, I can't hear comms, so I don't. You might want to tell him you have bubble, so he kind of encourages him to go in, because his shield did take a ton of poke, so his natural reaction would probably be, let me not go in. I mean, since we're here on this frame, let's just talk about this. Their McCree killed your Moira, essentially because you guys didn't scout Hotel at all, and your Sim just kind of teleported into the back line, which I don't know if that was called or not, but I don't know. But again, what you want to be doing right now is just rushing forward, fighting them really, really close quarters. Yeah, this is the kind of fight you want to take. Nice onto the Zen. I don't know if that was a call out. Right-click melee. You got to make sure you're looking to bubble that, because that Rein could have reconnected with that Sim and she'd be dead. A little bit poor tracking. Looks like you have like really low sensitivity. Little tunnel vision here, but I understand you're kind of shooting the shield. You know the McCree's there. Okay. At this point, you're just bubbling off cooldown. That's probably the biggest mistake that low SR Zaryas make, and it's really one of the easiest things to fix. So, there's only a couple reasons to bubble. You bubble to save someone's life, to close the distance, or manage aggression. You can bubble to allow your healers to catch up on healing. You can bubble to negate enemy or enable friendly cooldowns or abilities. So, for example, for that, because that one might be a little more complicated, if your McCree is high nooning, you can bubble him so he doesn't get slept. So you both negated an enemy ability and you enabled a friendly cooldown. Same thing with Genji. You know, when he ults, you can bubble him so he can't get flashed. You kind of enabled his cooldowns. And then you have the reason that everyone thinks to bubble, which is to get charge, which definitely is a reason to bubble, but what you have to realize is usually when you bubble for one of the other reasons I just listed, you'll get charge anyway out of it. So just bubbling to get charge is really not a great reason, unless you're really low energy. So if you have 75 energy or more, you really don't need to be bubbling to get charge. So like, you shouldn't be bubbling off cooldown unless it's gonna help your team in some other way. Your Reinhardt wants to swing his hammer, then yeah, sure, bubble him, even though you're already 75 energy. So definitely something to kind of keep in mind. Like, super important. Also, at this point, you're 2 down, but we kind of freeze frame, so that was easy to see. But see, you're doing a decent job of not taking poke. Your Reinhardt, not so much. So a bubble right there for your Rein would have been great, but still good bubbles from you. Okay. I think we're gonna. There's a couple of things to talk about right there. A couple of things. Let me swap back over. Well. Okay, let's review this a little bit more frame by frame, because there's more than a couple things to talk about here. Again, we can't hear comms, or I can't hear comms, so like I don't know what's being said. If your Reinhardt said he's going to shatter, or if it was just, which is more what I'm assuming, spontaneous. He sees a couple people and no Orisa shield, and just decides to shatter, which is completely fine. So typically, you don't want to double tank ult, especially if it's a Zarya Reinhardt, and the reason for that is, unless you have to win a fight, but the reason for that is because they feed off of each other. So the Rein will shatter, and then the Zarya will build ult off of that, or the Zarya will ult, or Zarya will grav, and the Rhyme will build Shatter off of that. So they're very, very powerful to build off of each other because they just are that way. Now, obviously, you both did have ult, so the cycle wouldn't be perfect, but the goal is to kind of have a cycle to some degree. So you kind of have one, then the other, then one, then the other, and you can build them off of each other. The other thing that was super, super risky was this Genji 100% could have reflected this Grav. And I think if we play forward, he is reflecting here. He just missed the reflect. So I'm actually going to show you. If I usually don't like to show map stuff, like map specific things, just because they're not super useful. I'd rather explain general knowledge. But for this specific point or place, you can always just go whoop, grab right there. It'll pretty much pull everyone in. So that's kind of a cool little trick. Good thing to know. The other thing that we have to talk about, but let me hop back and point it out first, and then I will kind of explain it and show it, is after the Genji and Ana are in the Grav, you don't right-click melee. And you kind of you didn't do this before, and I thought, oh, maybe whatever. But this is a super, super, super important part of Zarya's kit. So, right-click melee. Let me talk about it really quickly, because this is super essential for Zarya's kick. It allows her to kill faster. It allows her to do multiple or damage to multiple enemies. It's crazy important. So I'll probably just put a timer over this, but this is essentially what I'm talking about. If you just left click, that's how long it takes to kill an enemy. If you right click and left click and melee, this is how long it takes to kill an enemy. It's a shorter time period. And when you right click and melee, it has the ability to do damage to multiple enemies. So you can go, see, did damage to that bot and damage to that bot. And the right click will do it as well. Does damage to both of them. So if you have multiple enemies in one place, it's super, super good. It's also really, really good to use right click on enemies that are hard to hit. So maybe like Baby Diva or even Soldier. Things that are, you know, very, very hard for you to hit just because they're wiggling around, or like Lucio's and stuff like that. You can kind of just right click, because it has a little area of effect where it does damage. Right click also is super useful because it in scenarios where you're having a hard time tracking something. So like, let's say a Baby Diva hopped out of her mech and it's kind of hard to track her. If you right click next to her, her pattern will become predictable. It's like a mini Pharah boop. So whoop, you kind of know where she's gonna go, and it's easier to track that than it is to track like just her crouching and spamming. So yeah, right clicking, like right click melee, super important part of your kit. Also, if you have, let me actually demonstrate this. If you have only one ammo left, you can still right click melee. So crazy, crazy important part of your kit, especially at the end of your clip, to use right clicks if, you know, the situation is applicable for that. So so important. I'm probably gonna say right click melee quite a bit because I don't think you're gonna use it. I just don't think it's a part of your kit that you use. But it's crazy important that you learn it and that you use it. It allows Zarya to do so much more damage. Again, this looks like you have a really low sensitivity here. Just took you a while to kind of turn. The bubble, just, you know, make sure you have a reason to bubble. Nice. You're super tunnel vision here. Like, their McCree just ulted and you didn't even turn around. So, you have no clue where he was. He could have been right behind you ulting. Right click melee would have been very effective there. Again, some tracking issues. The right click melee actually probably would have killed her. That was literally a perfect example when the Mercy is kind of wiggling around and they're hard to hit. You can just kind of right click melee and it area of effect damage, and it just does so much damage. But your team's doing a good job. The enemy team staggered like really hard, never regrouped after they lost that initial fight, so you got second for free. Really, really good. I absolutely love that. I really like this too. You're kind of pushing up while you still have the advantage just to see what extra damage you can do. Nice bubble to block the sleep. I'm not sure if your bubble there was to prevent you from being shattered. Oh, and they did switch to an Ana, so now they have Nana Genji, which completely makes sense. I'm surprised they even started with this end. But there's not much you can do against that. That's the way Nano Blade goes, you know. It's okay. Again, make sure you have a reason to bubble. Even though you got charge out of it, you know. Good focus on the Genji after he dashed. You know, tracking could use a little bit of work. Really, really nice bubble on the Rhine. So let's actually talk about bubbling Reinhardts, because I think, go back a little bit. This is really this is an important concept. Sorry, I'm just gonna jump around a little bit because I think this is a good place to illustrate kind of bubbling Reinhardts and when do you bubble a Reinhardt. So the thing is, Reinhardt has this thing called, oh, let me actually make this a little smaller. Reinhardt has this thing called armor. And while he has armor, he takes significantly less damage from enemies. And as a Zarya player, here's a weird, fun little trick. It's a really good indication of when to bubble a Reinhardt, because you don't want to bubble him too early, like right now, when no one should be doing damage to him. Because, you know, either they'll see bubble and they'll stop shooting it, or he'll be in such a bad position where they'll shoot, break the bubble, and then just kill him anyway. So when you see his armor start to deplete, that's a really good time to bubble him, because he's not in any real danger until his armor is all gone. Once Reinhardt's armor is gone, he can be in some very serious danger, because his armor is a real protection for Reinhardt. But once you see his armor start to deplete, so once the enemy have taken away his armor, a little bit of it, that's a really, really good time to bubble him, because they're probably committed to shooting him, and it's very easy to get charge for him, and it'll actually have value for that Reinhardt, because it'll give him more HP, and it'll allow your healers to catch up on healing a little bit, because they can heal that little bit while he's bubbled and can't be damaged for that, you know, few hundred damage. So that's a super good trick about bubbling Reinhardt, so you don't bubble them too early. Again, nice focus on the Genji. Not sure what he's doing. Tracking. Are you just constantly reloading? Okay, you actually did have to reload here. It's fine. See that was a very good bubble. Although I don't think you may not have noticed it, but your Reinhardt is out of armor at this point. Your Reinhardt has no armor. So the enemy is going to be focusing him pretty hard because he doesn't have any armor. But you bubble him and you get massive amounts of charge from that. Kind of what we were talking about before, just walk forward, right-click melee into grav. There's no reason not to. You'll get so much more value out of it. Just walk into grav, especially right now when you have so much HP and armor on top of that. Just walk forward, right-click melee, and you're bubbling yourself, so you'll do so much more damage. Good bubble on your Reinhardt. He was almost dead. And still kind of sad that you guys used both tank ults, but kind of needed them a little bit to win the fight. Your tracking was a little bit poor here. It looks like you have a really low sensitivity. Okay, we definitely have to take a second at least and talk about this. So, right here, you could bubble this Sim to save her life, even though she doesn't die because she has armor on, so pog to your brig. But you decide to bubble the Reinhardt, but you bubble him really early. And I say that because McCree has flash. So if McCree flashes your Reinhardt, he gets a free fan the hammer. Essentially. That's what's gonna happen. But if you save your bubble till your Rhine gets flashed, like till he actually needs it, he gets flashed, you bubble him, and then McCree just fan the hammers your bubble. I mean, it's just free charge for you, and you got rid of an enemy ability, as opposed to you just wasted a bubble somewhat and hoped that the McCree would flash and just... Nice focus on the Reinhardt. Focus the supercharger. Nice focus on the supercharger. Right click. Again, you can kind of right click to finish things. Nice focus. The McCree got some nice headshots there. That's kind of the way that fight goes. But what was really good about that fight, I'll actually kind of go back and point this out a little bit, was how much cart you got for free because you guys stood in front of it. You took a fight in front of it. So right here, like right now, this is something a lot of low SR players don't do as well. You take a fight in front of the cart because while you're fighting, the cart is still being pushed. So right now you have 2 people on the payload who are pushing the cart for free. You're taking a fight, you're fighting this Orisa right here, and the payload is still being pushed. So even though you do lose this fight, you still got that extra couple meters of payload for free. As opposed to if you fought on the payload or behind the payload, if you did that, when they fight you, they are contesting the payload along with fighting you. So the payload doesn't move. So when possible, it's always definitely better to fight in front of the cart. So you get free payload. You guys should really be resetting here, but again, I can't hear the comms, so I don't know what's happening. But you kind of are. You're sort of soft resetting. But be careful about going in. Oh, their Ana wasted sleep. So this is gonna be interesting. This is gonna be rough. Yeah. Nice bubbles. You got some good charge out of that. But you have to be super careful here, because you could take a lot of poke right here. Let me kind of explain this a little bit, because it's back to the original concept I was talking about. Actually, that's fine. Maps, King's Row, because we definitely have to talk about angles really quickly, because this is kind of important, because you could definitely be taking a lot of poke if you're not very conscientious of the angles that you take and how you take them. I actually think my Overwatch is a little bit loud. Let me turn that down a little bit. Yeah, that should probably be better. Oh. So when you're coming here, this sight line is a ton of poke. For you, the time you walk, it takes you to walk from here, I don't know why I bubbled, all the way to here, that's a long distance. That's a lot of poke that the enemy has. So if the enemy is standing there, look at that, and that's where they're standing, during that time when you walk forward, you're taking poke. 1 second, 2 second, 3 second, 4, that's like 4 seconds of poke you just took. That's a lot of extra damage you don't want to take. And like, yes, you used your bubbles to absorb some of that poke, which was good, which got you charged at the same time, but you're still going to take a lot more poke walking forward. And it's the same thing with angles. If the enemy is, here, if you walk out here, you're going to take a lot of poke, and it takes you a while to close that angle. So they can see you for 1 second, 2 second, like 2 seconds. As opposed to if you're here, whoop, you can see the poke coming, and you take too much poke, half a second, you're back. So what you can do here is, instead of kind of walking forward and taking all this poke, you can kind of try and take some angles here. You're like, oh, because now you can close the angle really quickly. If the enemy is right there, just like before, instead of taking 4 seconds of poke, you take 1 second, 2 second, boom, you're out. You're over here now. You just close that angle. So that's kind of super, super important to remember, especially with the comp that you're running, because you don't want to have to use resources to like negate poke or to deal with poke. You want to use resources when you're in the fight, when you're engaging. So that's really, really important concept to always remember. Wait. What? Hold up. The heck? Wow. What a legend. Your Brig stunned their Reinhardt mid shatter. That's honestly pretty insane. That's super pog for the Brig. Huge play because you 100% would have been shattered here, and I'm assuming there's at least one person behind you, maybe the sim. I don't know. And this kind of, unironically, this kind of perfectly points out what we were just talking about. So not only does opening a wider angle, which is kind of what you're doing and more what your Reinhardt's doing, allow you to take more poke, but it also makes you more vulnerable. So let's say, let's actually just go back to Overwatch. Let's say, for example, you had even just stayed in the straight line. If this Reinhardt had shattered, you would have just bubbled your Rein like you did and would have blocked the shatter. Or the Reinhardt shield could have blocked the shatter. If the Reinhardt's over here, when he shields, he still can't block that shatter. And what's even worse, or what's even harder, is because you have like a Moira, your Moira is going to want to heal straight, in a straight line. So she's going to want to heal like, whoop. So if you're sitting here, she's going to, you know, hold her heal and everyone's going to get healed. If someone's over here, someone's over here, someone's over here, this is incredibly hard for her to heal. Because now she can only heal like one person as opposed to everyone. So this is why angles are so important. And you have to be super careful about taking wide angles. Because it is a lot harder for you to get healed. A lot easier for you to take poke. You're more vulnerable to abilities and stuff. So yeah, that's definitely something to be really, really careful of. It's kind of awesome that that just illustrated my point. But really, really be careful of that kind of stuff. So, like, look how much poke your Reinhardt has already taken. Look at his shield. Look how much poke that shield has taken, and you guys haven't even... He hasn't even gotten one hammer swing in yet. Like, it's just something to think about. And I know you are not the Reinhardt, but this is kind of something even to say in comms. Well, you don't want to micromanage in comms, so be very careful, but this is kind of cool educational bit, and you should try and not take poke as well. Although you do a fairly good job of not taking poke, so... Nice bubble. Yep, the Reinhardt is feeding, which is good. Nice grab, big grab. Right clicks, right clicks, right clicks, though. Don't forget to right click. Genji doing Genji things. Trying to 1v6. That's good. You guys got Nano Blade out of the way. You threw Bob out, too. That's... Right click would have just killed this Orisa right there. Again, be patient with the bubbles. Right click probably also could have killed this Mercy while she was rezzing. Let's actually watch that back. Yep, a right click right here as opposed to beaming. I know you ran out of energy. Would have just killed her. A bit unlucky that you ran out of, you know, ammo. Yeah, I mean... that's not too bad. But you win these kind of fights because that's the fights you want to take. Just you're close, you're on them, which is really, really good. That's the kind of fights you want to take. So, great job. Just be careful not to tunnel vision. You do kind of tunnel vision a lot. All right, let me pause this here. But you do kind of tunnel vision a little bit where you get stuck looking at someone and you're just that's your only focus. So just be a little careful of that. Just kind of, if I see it again, I'll point it out in the future. So you guys changed your main tank to Sigma, So this is going to be definitely more interesting, because you've kind of changed from brawl, which is what you were with a Reinhardt, to more poke, because Sigma is not really brawl. He's more poke. He has a lot of abilities to absorb a lot of damage, and he can do a lot of damage. So bubbling, for right now, how this applies to you is your bubbling is going to be absolutely critical. It's going to be more important than ever that you don't waste bubbles, because you're going to need them, because Sigma shield doesn't have that much HP, so you really will need your bubbles, and you're really going to need bubbles to enable your team to do things. So enable your Brig to make plays, enable your Sim to make plays, enable your Sigma to make plays. So it's going to be incredibly important, your bubble. You're going to have to be very patient with it here. So your Sim just got picked off. You know they have a Widow. This completely changes your playstyle quite a bit, because you have nothing, well, I guess an Ashe, but you have to be a lot more careful. You have to play a lot more back in alley, or a lot more in house. You have to be a lot more careful of sightlines now, because your Sigma shield is now going to be torn. He's going to want to place it in the front to try and negate damage coming from, you know, their main damage dealers, and he's also going to try and place it to negate damage coming from Widow or to deny sightlines. So you guys have to be very, very careful with what sightlines you play and what you take. This will be pretty rough. They're going into house. So that was a nice attempt. You were trying to bubble the Brig there, which was good. It just, someone walked in front of you. Unlucky. But yeah, that was the right call. See, you're going to need your bubble to enable Brig to make plays, enable people to get value. You need to be a lot more brawly here. So right now you're kind of letting their tank line do whatever they want. Your Brig was essentially acting as your tank, and you still do have a lot of HP. You know, 400 HP is still a lot of HP. You really have to act as a tank, especially in these situations. And then use your personal bubble very, very wisely to kind of save you, and less to get massive charge, even though you do need massive charge, but more to be able to kind of enable you to act as a tank. And their Widow is kind of picking off people because you have no sightlines. Really bad. You guys didn't take alley, which is totally fine. It's a weird thing, super stressful. But yeah, sightlines are incredibly important now. Yeah, their Widow's essentially sitting up here, doing massive amounts of damage. Yeah, this is just rough. This is one of those rough things where you just got to really, really think about how you play. You can no longer play the way you did before, because it just changed. A lot of things changed. You no longer have kind of the ability to play like you were before. So you got to play a lot smarter. So now the big thing here is you guys you lost first point, which is fine. It's not to stagger, so you don't give away second point for free. It's to actually be able to group up, not to completely stagger. Oh, nice attempt, nice attempt. But you just need to be backing out here. I see you're trying to go for extra ult charge, which is great, but at this point, at a higher SR, you would just be pretty much pushed right now. And you and Sigma would be dead, and then they're going to get so much more of second for free. They shouldn't get the whole thing, but they'll get so much more for free because you're just staggering here. So not staggering is incredibly important. Again, patient with your bubbles. You bubbled before the shield broke, but I don't have to tell you that. Unlucky. Nice headshots from the Widow, but yeah, you just really got to be careful of staggering here. It's incredibly important not to stagger. Something else you could do, like while regrouping, is because this is something I was thinking of. This is a cool thing to think about. So while Obviously, you have to pull back so you don't stagger in that situation. But you don't necessarily have to completely leave. What you can do is you can deny... Let me actually go to Overwatch. You can deny spots that the Widow wants to take. So let's say, you know, you're over here. You decide, okay, we've lost too many people. I have to get out. Actually, I think my Overwatch is still a little bit too loud. Fix that. You decide, oh, we have to get out. So you back off, but you don't have to back. It is probably best to back off all the way back and just regroup with your team. But what you can do is you know their Widow is going to try and kind of flank a little bit to set up positioning. So you can sit and try and deny some area so that their Widow can't get up there, can't be over there. Even if that's just you walk over here and you sit up here. So now their Widow can't sit here. She can't come up here to try and get early picks. You know, something like that is not necessarily a bad idea. So definitely something to think about. Another thing to do. So it's also going to be incredibly important to scout. Like, I can't hear comms, so I don't know what's being said, but because they have a Widow, it's incredibly, incredibly important to scout. Well. Right click. Right click. Yeah, you're kind of on a wild goose chase there a little bit after that Genji. Oh. Okay, okay. A couple of things here. Something else that's really hard for Zaryas in general, and tanks in general, and this is not limited to low SR, this is pretty much throughout the whole ladder, is making sure that when you ult, your ult gets value. So if you're a tank player, your ult needs to have follow-up. Unless you're really high charge as Zarya, you don't really have enough damage to follow up. Like, for example, this ult that you just did, give it a second, caught a ton of people. Caught a ton of people. Really did. It was really, really good. But there was no follow-up for it. Even if you didn't get slept, and even if there wasn't wall, there was no real follow-up for this. So, something to be very, very careful of and to think about before you ult, because it's incredibly important as a tank. Also, this ult probably should have been eaten by the D.Va. I might talk about that a little bit in the future, like how to prevent your ult from getting eaten. I don't know why that D.Va ulted there. It was bad. Yep, you're trying to help your Widow, which is fine, but you do have to remember to stay focused. Alright, so at this point, they've capped the point. What you need to be doing is changing your sightlines. So you know they have a Widow. You know you don't want to take long sightlines. So you have to be very careful about where you play. Yeah, if you keep kind of peeking this main, the Widow is just going to get really nice headshots. This is a really good position to play because it denies their Widow a lot of kind of space to play in. It's a lot about literally what we talked about before, being able to deny angles. So if you want to play here, that's fine. That's decent. But you are denying angles there. You're also denying angles here because you see Widow. Whoop, whoop. What you don't want to do, which you were doing a fairly good job of this, is playing in long sightlines. So you're going, because now that's just going to be really bad. You're giving Widow a lot of sightlines to kind of do stuff. Something else that's important to know, although this is kind of particular to King's Row, is if the cart gets past about here, you don't have, maybe a little farther, maybe about here, you don't have another fight. Like, you do, but you'll be staggered for that other fight. You'll be coming out, and that fight's in shambles. So you won't have enough time for an organized fight. So you do want to contest the cart or take a fight before it's about here, like before it gets past here, because you want to be able to have another fight even if you lose. So kind of a niche thing, but super, super important. Oh, right click would have been good right there, but Again, just be very careful with angles. Like, you can literally see their Widow. Bubble could have saved your Brig there. Nice, get this D.Va. You can just right-click the D.Va as she pops out of mech. It'll do a tremendous amount of damage to her, especially if you're fully charged. And it's almost an instant kill. Just right-click and a little bit of a beam. So. Nice on the Genji. Again, be careful with the bubble. That was just a panic bubble right there. Your Brig could use the bubble right now. Bubble your Brig. Yeah. Unlucky, your Sigma took away his shield. No. Try and do some scouting here. Like, I know it's easy to say because we saw the Widow grapple up because we're in the replay viewer, but always try and be doing a little bit of scouting. Like, I don't know what's happening in comms, but you do really want to be calling the Widow out, because if you give her free range or you don't know where she is, she can do a tremendous amount of damage if she can hit her shots. So, like, you don't really know what to do here. For this whole kind of time period, you're really stuck, and you're not sure how to play, because there isn't much you can do. So, well, you see the D.Va, you shoot at the D.Va, you're like, okay, I see D.Vas up there. You're like, okay, I still see D.Vas. You don't really know what to do. You just kind of... At least now you're focusing the Genji, which is fine. But you bubble your Sigma here for no real reason. Even for Sigma, you can even use the same trick you do for the Rhine, where he has shield here. When his shield starts to deplete, or people start to damage it, then bubble him, and you'll get more value out of those bubbles. But you take a massive headshot from a Widow right here, and yeah, you really aren't sure what you're doing here. You're just kind of walking around in the middle of nowhere. Again, you have to be really, really careful of sightlines, especially when they run a Widow. But what you can be doing is you can be playing kind of close to cover. So, if you're over here, and the Widow's up here somewhere, you can kind of be playing close to cover, even in the house, although that's a little bit more dangerous because they have more sideline. So you can kind of just be very careful of the angles that you're taking. So if you're here, you can get shot from a lot less places than if you're here. Just something to kind of think about. Unlucky you got pinned. That was long range pinned right there. Bit of a panic grav. Who did you bubble here? So you could be bubbling your McCree, because he's going to get focused pretty heavily. Oh, I guess he doesn't get focused. But, again, it's kind of about enabling friendly cooldowns. Although the Moira wasn't bad, because you knew she was going to take damage. Really nice save on your roadhog there. It was really good. Although, again, be patient with your bubbles. Be patient. Oh, your Brig took that for you. But yeah, be patient with your bubbles. Even that personal bubble, be patient with your bubbles. They nanoed their Mercy. Fantastic. Nice, nice. You can right-click into this. Right-click, you'll do damage to multiple people. Nice focus on the D.Va. Again, right-click would be good. Tracking could use a little work. Long sight lines of the Widow. A little bit unlucky, but you do have to contest cart there, so Right clicks would be good, especially at the end of your clip. Or your ammo, whatever you want to call that. That was a decent grav. You were going to catch a bunch of people. But you do have to be careful about not getting these gravs eaten. I don't know. Did we know where the diva was when you threw that grav? Yeah, I think the diva was pretty close. Yeah, I guess the diva wasn't directly there, but you just have to be a little careful about that. If it happens again, like, I'll talk about, like, how to, ways to not get your grav eaten. Yeah, this Widow, I mean, the sightlines are just killing you guys right now. Oh. Kree got mad value there. But, yeah, these Widow sightlines are... Oh, get that Widow if you can. Right click up there. Nice right click. Okay, a little late, but the thought was there. That was actually really well done by the diva. Even though she staggered. She was trying to boop your roadhog forward. Oh, bubble him. Nice. Good save. Oh, this Rhine is going to have shatter. Ooh. Good job. You got to get that Widow. Those sightlines are... You guys have to be really, really careful of those sightlines. Yep, you can use your bubble to enable you to go forward and get a pick. Really, really good. Aim was a little bit potato-y there, but I think you have a really low sensitivity. Just to kind of like talk about your sensitivity for a little bit, I think it's really low. If I had to guess, it's probably around... Oh, someone messaged me. It's probably around 2,000 EDPI, which is what I'm guessing. My suggestion would be, if obviously up it a little bit if you can. If you can't, my suggestion would be is lower your in-game DPI and higher and raise your mouse DPI. So like it's still the same number. So if your EDPI is 2,000, you can just lower your in-game and higher your mouse to have it still equal 2,000. But that's definitely what I would suggest, because it looks like you have a lot of trouble kind of tracking, and you also have a lot of trouble like turning. There's a couple of times when you can't do a full 180, and I would definitely suggest being able to do at least a full 180, if not more. So nice right clicks. Ooh, save your bubble. Oh, you're trying to save people with your bubble, which is really, really good. Nice, nice. You can just push this Widow right here. Yep, just have the corner and just kind of peek the corner. There, just like that. Kind of keep the angles. And right click up there. But it's totally fine. Again, think about your bubbles. Your hog wasn't really... Okay. So, let's talk about Zarya's grav. Zarya's grav is kind of a cool thing, because the animation for grav starts, you know, at the same time the sound starts. So it's actually pretty hard to eat a Zarya grav, because unless you like throw it really far, so unless you do like this, whoop, and you can see it for like 30 years, if you just look down and grab, it's fairly hard. So what divas are looking to do is, on like when they try to eat a grab, they're looking for tells. So if you walk forward, you know, walk forward and reload. If you look at a wall suddenly, if you look at the floor or somewhere else that you normally wouldn't be looking, you know, that's a tell. Let me actually hop into training. But so what you want to do as Zarya is either be very aware of when the diva used Matrix, so that you know she doesn't have it, or try and get rid of the tells. So there's a couple of cool little things you can do. Let me just get my ult really quickly. Because there's a cool little trick that you can do, although it's kind of situational. And it's not probably necessarily needed at silver, but it's a cool little tidbit of information. Let me just build grav real quick. Oh, I missed that. Okay, so Graviton has an animation to it, just like right-click has an animation to it. So sometimes you can bait divas into matrixing is if you walk forward and right-click. What else you can do to kind of hide that animation, if you will, if you bubble a friendly or a teammate, if you grab, after that, that will hide that animation, so it will be a little bit harder to eat. It won't hide the sound of it, but it'll hide the animation of Zarya's grab, like so. Nope. But that essentially hides the animation of it. So that's really something cool you can do. What you really should be looking to do when they have a diva is just being very aware of where she is, and if she's just used Matrix, making sure she hasn't just turned around and turned back. That's a pretty common trick at higher SR. So make sure she's, stopped her DM, and then you can grab. And just try and grab, close. Wait till they come really close to you, grab around a corner where she can't eat it. So you can grab here if they're over here, and then she can't eat it. So that's kind of the stuff to really kind of think about and be aware of when you're a Zarya and you're trying to grab, because it can be really rough. And a better diva would have eaten this grab here, because they would have flown to high ground, turned around, looked down, and saw your grab and just eaten it. So. Also, it's very hard for your team to get follow-up here on this grav, because look where this grav is positioned. Let me actually go back into King's Row for a second. Maps. King's Row. It's also very hard for your team to get follow-up there, because they have no real angle. So this is, like I was saying before, something to think about a lot before you ult as a tank in general, but especially for heroes like Zarya, where a lot of times you need follow-up. I actually should also talk about right-click jumping. I'll talk about that in a second. But so like if you grab here, how many people can really see that grab? You have to be standing here, or maybe there's a line of sight here, maybe not. So like you essentially have to be here or further this way to see that grab. If you grab here, or even, right here on the thing, you just go whoop. That line of sight extends out a lot farther. So they can probably see it if they're over here, maybe over here. So again, be very, very careful of line of sight, because if your roadhog is here, he now has to walk all the way over here before he can shoot into the grab. And by that time, the grab will pretty much be over, or it will be over. So something to really, really think about. Right clicks would be so effective. Yeah, so you don't have to right click all the time, but when there's a massive amount of people and you can do a lot of damage, right clicking is really good. Again, no reason for that bubble there. You're just kind of panic bubbling. You wanted to get charged, so especially when you're over 75 charge, really think about really think about why you're gonna bubble. So make sure it kind of fulfills one of the things we talked about before. So something I want to talk about, because I didn't see you do this at all, and this is a relatively useful part of Zarya's kit. Not essential, but very, very useful, especially for walking back to fights, is, I don't know what it's called, I guess right-click bunny hopping, where you use the right-click to propel you farther. Oh, I messed that one up. So essentially... Oh. I messed it up. You guys didn't see anything. I don't know how I messed that one up. Okay. Whew. Thankfully I didn't mess that up twice. So, if you don't use right click, you won't be able to cross this gap, but you should be able to cross this gap fairly consistently if you are a Zarya player. Also, there's the double right click where you can fire one up into the air. Who knows if I'll actually be able to do this one. Oh! And you can actually make that. So, unfortunately, I did not, because I guess I need a little practice there. But that should be pretty, you know... You definitely should be able to utilize the right click to move somewhere faster, because it will get you there faster. And as long as you don't damage yourself to the point where you have no more rechargeable shields, you'll be fine, because your shields will recharge, and they recharge fairly quickly. So that's also a very important part of Zarya's kit that I didn't see you use, and you definitely should kind of practice a little bit and use if you can. So, you probably shouldn't submit games that you won for VOD reviews. Like, I understand why. And it's still good. It's better to submit a game that you win than a game that you lost. But if you win a game, that chances are, unless you had someone hard carrying on your team, which I don't think you did, chances are you were just better than the enemy tanks. So, you'll win most of those games. The reason you submit losses for VOD reviews is when you lose a game, you usually have something that you did wrong that the enemies capitalized on. Like in this case, although you did make some mistakes, the enemy didn't really capitalize, other than their Widow, who did a very good job, but the enemy didn't really capitalize on any of the big mistakes you made to kind of punish you enough to lose the game over. So it's harder to have a teaching moment, because then you kind of just have to rely on what's being said or what you're being told as legitimate when you didn't die in that scenario, or they didn't push you. So it's a little bit harder, but overall, pretty good VOD, pretty good. You're not a good player. Definitely some things to think about. Especially, I would definitely look into your sensitivity. I don't know if that's holding you back. I'm not going to say that it is, because sensitivity is never holding you back, but it definitely could be a factor. But if I was to give you 3 things to definitely kind of work at, to think about, to improve, it would probably be how you bubble, to really think about how you're bubbling and what's the purpose. If the purpose is to get energy, that's completely fine, but kind of just think about that a little bit. Right clicking, of course, you really don't use any right clicks at all, and right clicks are incredibly important. And the scouting. So at low SR, and this isn't kind of particular to you, pretty much no one scouts at all. And it's incredibly important to kind of be able to just look different places to see where the enemy's setting up and what's happening, and like that's incredibly important. That information gives you so much. That's so good. So definitely try and look to do that a little bit more, especially during downtime when you're not particularly doing anything. Denying space where the enemy Widow would want to grapple to, or going into the house to make sure that it's safe so the McCree doesn't kill your Moira. Stuff like that will win you fights. So if you've made it this far in the VOD, PogChamp, I'm sure it's going to be a long one. If you would like me to review your VODs, please post them in the Elohell Discord in the VOD request channel. You can feel free to tag me. My Discord tag is panda #2050. I'll put all the links to everything in the description. I hope you've learned something from this review, and best of luck climbing.